Good morning. My name is Claire Schleicher. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of our board of directors. Welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are a community of youth, adults, and children of many diverse theologies, held together by covenant, not creed. Together, we share the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. May you know deep welcome and belonging in this place. To share a request for today's meditation, please place it in the chat box before the opening hymn or add it to our meditation bowl. Please gain consent before you use someone's full name. The meditation bowl is in the soul work area over here, along with activities to help people of all ages engage with today's service. Welcome to any visitors. We are so glad you're here. Please feel more than welcome to join us at our social hour after the service in the social hall. There will be a 12-minute intro and tour immediately following the service. Please find Margie, who will be holding a large sign over here by the fabric walls. There she is. Thanks, Margie. A deep and heartfelt thank you to all who helped make yesterday's installation of Reverend Jessica a joyous success. It was such a joy-filled event, and we couldn't have done it without you. Please note, there will be no in-person or Zoom worship next Sunday, May 26th. The service will be premiering on YouTube at 10 a.m., so feel free to watch it then or later in the week and enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Also, mark your calendars for Sunday, June 23rd. On that day, we won't be gathering here for a regular worship service. We'll be gathering at the Riverview Theater in South Minneapolis to watch the General Assembly worship service along with congregants from Minneapolis, Minnetonka, and Bloomington. There will be a picnic afterwards at Minnehaha Falls, so please come join us that day. And also, please come join us this Wednesday for our last night of dinner and programming. We are hosting an end-of-the-year pizza party with games and ping pong and general late spring merriment. We hope you can join us. In community news announcements, please note that the bidding has opened for Dining for Dollars event, and various people have volunteered to host lovely dinner parties and brunches for two main reasons: to raise money for our church and to foster a deeper sense of community and connection. We're sure that you'll find one event that catches your eye and fits your schedule. We hope you'll join us for this community building event. Be sure to bid soon, since bidding will be closed in 2 short weeks. Last year, the Facing Race Steering Committee promoted and the congregation adopted the 8th principle. As one way to implement the 8th principle, the Facing Race group has been learning about Native American history and culture, has written a draft of a land acknowledgement statement, and is developing an action plan to give meaning to that statement. Please visit the Facing Race table today in the social hall to learn more and share your ideas. And so ends our announcements. Welcome to our church. Together, we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together we make it a holy place. I'm Reverend Jack Gady, and my pronouns are he, him.
My name is Jennifer Carroll. My pronouns are she, her. My original church family was formed at First Presbyterian Church in St. Cloud. We attended Bible studies, picnics, pageants, choirs, youth groups, and the rite of passage called confirmation. It was a uniquely formative time for me, and I still feel close with some of those people today. My parents have always guided me gently toward God by sharing with me their own faith journeys and rituals. To understand their faith has helped me understand them better. Once, as a child, I remember my dad tried to explain God's purpose to me. To illustrate, he drew a picture of an umbrella and said the umbrella was like God protecting our family, and each stick figure under it representing the 5 members of our family. The rain coming down was the hardship or trouble in our life we might encounter. It made me think about that hymn I had learned from Sunday school about he's got the whole world in his hands. And I took comfort that all the other little families in the picture were protected under God's even bigger umbrella too. In those years, I had become accustomed to the idea that God was a breath away and looked after me and my family with his big patriarchal umbrella. I had no desire to proselytize my faith in God, but I knew it was a strength to draw upon whenever I needed. And in my early 20s, I needed that strength. I sought treatment for alcoholism and was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. In order to bring as many alcoholics into the fold of recovery, the founders of this 12-step program felt the key to staying sober was surrendering the compulsion to drink to a God of one's understanding. It doesn't matter what kind of God, but it has to be bigger than one's own ego, which means it has to be really big. It wasn't a stretch for me then to be reacquainted with this benevolent idea of a God as I worked the 12 steps into many years of recovery. Having a God of my understanding and allowing for the power of a prayer to be a possibility of strength and relief from a disease of the mind may have saved me from the grips of active alcoholism. No longer did I rely on the God of my youth, but instead I was often and am often tapping into the practice of prayer and meditation, which is a power greater than myself. When my husband Ian and I had children, we felt it was important to introduce our boys to the idea of a church family, a community of people to grow with. We wanted to discuss important ideas stemming from a deeper understanding of world religions, not just Christianity. We want our children to have a broader understanding of spiritual life, a cultural understanding of religious practices, and the opportunity to foster relationships and garner strength from whatever form of spirituality may be helpful to them. We have found that place here in Unitarian Universalism. We hope our sons feel that way too as we cultivate this church family. This morning, I light the chalice, the symbol of our denomination, where we can discover and celebrate our own spiritual practices together.
Please join me in the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. You may already know the melody in your hymnal. You can also choose to sing the descant with me. It repeats the whole time the line on the bottom just as you see it. Please join me. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, 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 you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows.
Good morning. My name is Kristen Mayer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Minister Emeritus of the UU Fellowship in Northfield, and I've come back and am a member here now for the past year or so, and delighted to be. The story this morning, and by the way, if there are kids who'd like to move up so you can see better, feel free. We got seats right here, perfect ones in the front row, perfect ones in the front row. Or if you want to stay with your folks, that's okay too, whatever you like better. But the story this morning is from the Kojiki, which is the most ancient book of Japan. It is a collection of wonderful, come on up. You can sit there if you want. You might even be able to see best if you sit right. Oh, but that's, oh, yeah, that is pretty good. That was pretty good. You're perfect where you are. So the Kojiki is the oldest book of Japan, and it's a collection of stories about the gods and goddesses of Japan, similar to Norse mythology or the theologies of ancient Greece or Rome. And the story that we're going to tell today is about the sun goddess, Amaterasu Omikami. And I say, we're going to tell it because I'm going to need your help. Will you help me? Yes. I'm going to need a lot of help. Will you help me? Yes. Excellent, good. So one of the things I'm going to have you do is play the role of some roosters. Now, roosters in Japan do not say cock-a-doodle-doo because they don't speak English, right? Probably don't speak Japanese either. But the Japanese phrase for what a rooster says is koko-kokoro. So I'm going to give you the signal like this, and then we'll say koko-kokoro together, like big, loud roosters. So here we go. Koko-kokoro! Oh, very nice. Good. And the other thing I'm going to need you to do is to pretend like we are having a big, loud, happy, fun party with music and laughter and dancing, kind of like yesterday with Reverend Jessica. So I'm going to give you a signal. I'm going to say, hit it. And then I'm going to be like, bum, 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 bum. And then if you all can make that sound too, or you can laugh, you can clap, or whatever, just make a big, loud noise, and then the story will work. So let's practice it. Hit it. Bum 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 woo bum 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 woo. Oh, excellent, perfect. We are ready. So long ago, high up in the heavens above Japan, was the land of the gods and goddesses. It was a peaceful land, ruled by the sun goddess Amaterasu Omikami. The sun goddess was a kind and gentle ruler, and when she smiled her gentle smile, all of the heavens were at peace. Now, Amaterasu, the sun goddess, had a little brother named Susanoo no Mikoto, and he lived down on earth. Well, one day he called up to the heavens, "Please, sister, Can I come and live in the heavens with all of the gods and goddesses? And the sun goddess said, if you are to come and live in the land of the gods and goddesses, you must promise to behave and not make any mischief. Oh, oh yes, sir. Yes, sister, Susano said. I promise to behave and not make any mischief. And Amaterasu smiled her gentle smile, and Susano climbed up into the land of the heavens. Now, Susano was the sun goddess's little brother, but he was also a strong and powerful god who liked to play rough and rowdy sometimes. And at first, he remembered his promise to his sister, but after a while, he forgot. Soon he was stomping through the lands, wrecking the rice fields and destroying the canals that the other gods and goddesses had built. But Amaterasu did not worry. My little brother is just making a bit of mischief, she said. I am sure he will not make any more trouble. And she smiled her gentle smile. But Susano got rowdier and rowdier. And Amaterasu said nothing. Then one day, the sun goddess had called all the goddesses into the loom house, where they were going to weave a special cloth of gold for all the gods and goddesses. Susano snuck up outside of the loom house. He took a huge horse's hide and threw it through the window and into the room. It landed on the loom with a crash. Splinters flew everywhere. Some of the goddesses were hurt. Amaterasu was furious. She could no longer smile her gentle smile. She ran to a cave, hid herself inside, and sealed the door shut with a giant boulder. Without the sun goddess, the heavens and the earth were plunged into darkness. All the gods and goddesses rushed to the cave. Please, sun goddess, they said, the world has been plunged into darkness. Please come out and smile your gentle smile. But they heard nothing from the cave. The strongest gods and goddesses tried to move the boulder. They pushed and they pulled and they pushed and pulled together, but they could not make it budge. They would need another plan. First, they built a huge bonfire so they could see. Then they gathered all the roosters of the land very quietly and put them around the cave. Finally, they got a giant 8-sided mirror and they positioned it perfectly in front of the opening. Now they were ready. They began to dance and sing and make music. Hit it! Bum, 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 bum. Deep inside the cave, Amaterasu heard music and laughter. How can there be music and laughter when the world has been plunged into darkness? She wondered. She called out, "What is going on out there?" "It's the new sun goddess," they answered. "We're welcoming her." New sun goddess? Curious, she moved the boulder open just a crack. Light shot out of the cave, and the roosters thought it was dawn. How can there be dawn without me? Wondered Amaterasu. Even more curious, she opened the boulder a little bit more and looked outside. There was the mirror, and not recognizing her own reflection, she saw the light of a new sun goddess. "Beautiful," she said, and she stepped outside to take a look. Quickly, the gods and goddesses rushed behind her and closed the boulder. Everyone clapped and cheered. Woo! The world was once again filled with light. "Oh, sun goddess," said all of the gods and goddesses, "please never plunge us into darkness again." And Amaterasu, seeing how much they all needed her, she forgot her anger and smiled her gentle smile once again. And Susanoo no Mikoto? Well, he was sent back down to earth for a little while to think about what he had done. The end. And this is where we sing the kids out. Yes. So do you usually rise? Oh, good. Let's rise and yes, let's do it and sing the children to their religious education. And thank you for coming.
Please join me for a moment of prayer or meditation. Source of life and love, spirit of mystery and wonder, we cannot do this alone. Every week at this time, we come together in gratitude, celebration, and in this place, we name some of our challenges. We choose to make ourselves known to our fellow travelers. We ask for help because we're not alone on this journey. The tendrils of our lives reach toward the sun, toward nourishment, and our roots dig deep into the earth, the soil, the source of our being. So many things collide within us, around us, and we know it helps us to name them, to organize them. Our friend who is struggling doesn't need us to say their name out loud to receive the blessing, but it helps us to name out loud the prayers and hopes of our hearts. It helps us to embody a posture of blessing for others. In this time, as we sit in the mystery of this moment, we let our minds run across the names of the people in our lives who need care and support. For those struggling with addiction, we pray for resilience and peace. For those struggling both mentally and physically, we pray for healing and wholeness. For those of us deep in grief, may we find comfort and consolation knowing that we are not alone. For those of us with anxiety, may we find our calm center. For those of us celebrating a success or a milestone, we join them in celebration. As a community, we celebrate the official installation of our lead minister, Jessica. May she and we be blessed by her ministry among us and by the collaborative work and vision and a joy that we will create together. This morning, we hold the following people in our tender care. We pray for the family of Jihad, who lived with Lori and Alan Winker last year. His family remains in Gaza. They are without food, water, or health care. Their physical and mental health are suffering greatly. And if you have people in your life who could use some prayer and positive energy, think about them now. Dwell on their names. Hold them in your heart. Your name might also be on this list. And now, in the stillness of this moment, we speak out loud the names of those we're holding. Knowing that together we can hold it all. May it be so and make it so. Amen. Please remain seated for hymn number 83 in the gray hymnal, Winds Be Still.
This is the moment in the service when we practice gratitude and support in the form of giving to our offering plate. The gifts collected today will go to support the mission of this congregation, to grow our souls and serve the world. There are a couple of ways you can give today. You can text to give feature, the number is in your order of service. You can give on the website, or you can place cash or check in the offertory basket. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we live together. The offering will now gratefully be collected.
Grow your garden, grow it tall and green, and every color in a rainbow. Grow your garden, give it tender care, and you will reap what you will sow. In your garden, plant some flowers, they will take root, they will grow. Watch them blossom in your garden, all the flowers in a row. Tend your garden with a passion, and it will pay you back in time. When clouds come and rains fall, just remember the sun will shine. And your garden, as the years go by, will grow into a place of beauty, filled with memories, filled with life and love, a quiet place for all to see. When clouds come and rains fall, just remember the sun will shine. And your garden, as the years go by, will grow into a place of beauty, filled with memories, filled with life and love, a quiet place for all to see. Grow your garden.
The first reading this morning is from poet Maya Angelou, Caged Bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, and for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The second reading is adapted from India Ari's song, I Am Light. We are not the mistakes that we've made or any of the things that caused us pain. We are not the pieces of the dreams we left behind. We are light, we are light. We are divinity defined. We are the God on the inside. We are all stars, pieces of it all. We are light, we are light.
Tomorrow morning, if you wake up and the sun does not appear, I will be here. If in the dark you lose sight of love, hold my hand and have no fear. I will be here. I will be here when you feel like being quiet, or you need to speak your mind. I will listen. I will be here when your laughter turns to crying. Through winning, losing, and trying, we'll be together, 'cause I will be here. Tomorrow morning, if you wake up and your future seems unclear, I will be here. Just as sure as seasons were made for change, our lifetimes are made for years. I will be here. I will be here. You can cry on my shoulder. When the mirror tells you you're older, I'll still hold you. I will be here to watch you grow in beauty, tell you all the things you are to me. I will be true to this promise that I made to you, thanking life for giving you to me. Just as sure as seasons were made for change, our lifetimes are made for years. I will be here, we'll be together, 'cause I will be here.
blackbird singing in the dead of night. When the song Blackbird by Paul McCartney first came out in 1968, Melba Patillo Beals would have been about 27 years old, and she had already lived a lifetime by then. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. Melba Patillo Beals, at the tender age of 15, was one of the 9 Black students who attempted to integrate Little Rock's Central High School in 1957. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Originally, the list had been longer. 17 Black high school students in Little Rock, Arkansas, had signed up to attend the massive, ornate Central High that had working microscopes, chemistry labs, and new textbooks, not the broken desks and 3-legged tables of the high school for Black students. But school officials made it clear that Black students weren't welcome, integration order or not. If they came, they wouldn't be allowed to participate in any extracurriculars, drama, debate, sports. And then the list of the Black students scheduled to enroll at Central High was even published in the newspaper with their home addresses. There were threats of violence, and that was when 17 dropped down to 9. On the first day of school, though they were ready to go, the 9 Black students were told to stay home while the NAACP lawyers waited to hear that a judge had upheld the integration order. They received the green light by phone late the night before, the second day of school, when they would start their first day. The president of the Arkansas NAACP, Daisy Bates, arranged for the children to go together that Wednesday, meeting a couple of blocks away and entering accompanied by a small interracial group of ministers. Melba had driven with her mother that morning, but there were so many cars they could not park near the designated corner. They found a spot a few blocks away and began to walk. They were surprised, and in all of the Little Rock 9 and their parents and the organizers were surprised to find an enormous crowd surrounding the huge high school. Not knowing what was going on, Melba was standing on her tippy toes, trying to see what was ahead. She saw another of the Little Rock 9, Elizabeth Eckford, walking alone away from the school, surrounded by this mob. I think that's the best descriptor. Her family didn't have Elizabeth's family didn't have a phone, and she never got word about the meeting spot. And Melba's mother's first instinct was to get to Elizabeth, but the sea of white people made that impossible. Melba described the crowd as layers and layers and layers of red-faced, angry white people. She said it sounded like when you go to a football game or a rodeo, just angry, angry crowds. This is like the opposite of that. It's like great. A pumpkin, absolute pumpkin. Well, here they were, these angry, angry crowds, all looking at Elizabeth Eckford. And then someone turned around and saw them. The man made a threat. Her mother said, "Get to the car." And they began literally running for their lives, their pursuers' feet pounding behind them. They barely made it, and I mean barely, speeding off with bricks being hurled after them. But they made it. And Elizabeth Eckford, the 15-year-old they had seen on the other side of the crowd, she made it too. They all made it home that day, each with their own harrowing story. Well, eventually, after weeks of work by the NAACP lawyers and President Eisenhower meeting with the Arkansas governor, the students returned for a second day of school. And that's when the Little Rock police were overrun by the crowds outside. That was who was in charge of protecting the school that day, was the Little Rock police. And the students were called to the principal's office, and then they were given instructions to lie down on the floor of a car that was driven out of the underground garage by the assistant police, who had strict orders to stop for nothing. And this was the assistant police who had argued with the other adults that were there that day and said, "No, we're not going to sacrifice one student to get the others out. They're all getting out." That was actually up for debate. And Melba overheard it also. Finally, Eisenhower sent in the 101st Airborne, and the 9 students were able to actually attend Central High School. And that doesn't mean these brave students were safe there. In her riveting and powerful memoir, Warriors Don't Cry, Melba Patillo-Beals describes the daily harassment they received from students, the threats, the physical violence in little and big forms, and the minimal to no protection from the adult staff. Melba remembered one teacher, though, a shorthand teacher named Mrs. Pickwick, who was no nonsense, she said, and would not allow me to be bothered in her classroom. She also made me feel welcome, she said. Just sitting in her room was such a respite because she wouldn't let anyone in her room say or do anything to me. We tend to think that one person can't make a big difference in the face of all of the injustice in the world, but one person can often make all of the difference, a huge difference, sometimes just by creating a small oasis of care, decency, and love. Well, somehow all of the students survived that year, though one of them was expelled simply for calling her tormentors white trash. All of that happened with little to no accountability that I know of, and just that comment, and she was done. But they all survived, and Ernest Green, the only senior, became the first Black graduate of Little Rock Central High School. But of course, the story doesn't end there. The next fall, to avoid integration, Governor Faubus closed all public schools for all of the children in the entire state of Arkansas. Melba had no school to go to. On top of that, the KKK had offered the equivalent of today $100,000 for the killing of any of the Little Rock Nine. Melba's family, understandably, made the difficult decision to send her to live with a family in California for her senior year. Well, unknown to Melba, the family was a white Quaker family, and I can understand why they might not have told her. They wanted her to be safe, and she may not have gone. Because it was a frightening experience for her to live with a white family and to go to a school again with only 8 or 9 Black students among hundreds of white students. There I was, she said, in the same predicament. The difference was they weren't hostile. She said, but I was still alone, looking for my place. Thankfully, the family she stayed with was extraordinarily kind. I love the Quakers. She was able to begin the work of healing. So by 1968, when Paul McCartney's song was hitting the airwaves, she had survived Little Rock, graduated from high school, started college, married and had a daughter, was returning to college, and she was still involved in a long process of healing, still living in a world that was struggling with racism and white supremacy and that she was experiencing. When she first heard that song, Blackbird Singing in the Dead of Night, she didn't think it was about the Little Rock Nine, but she wondered if it was about Black pain. She heard Paul McCartney saying through that song, this is what she said she heard, I hear you. I may not be able to rescue you, but I hear you singing in the dark. Decades later, she learned that the experience of the Little Rock Nine was a major impetus for that song. Paul McCartney said, I was sitting around with my acoustic guitar, and I heard about the civil rights troubles that were happening in the 60s in Alabama, Mississippi, Little Rock in particular. I mean, he would have seen the footage that everybody there had seen, And I just thought, he said, it would be really good if I could write something that if it ever reached any of the people going through those problems, it might kind of give them just a little bit of hope. Well, the song came full circle when it was recorded by Beyoncé on her largely country album, Cowboy Carter, that was recently released. It's a great album. It really is remarkable. Here is a song written by a white man from the UK, in large part as a message to Black women in the US enduring repression, disrespect, and dehumanization, being sung now by a proud, successful, really uber successful Black woman singing to other Black women still enduring racism, "Take these broken wings and learn to fly." For Melba Beals, when it was sung by McCartney, she understood it to mean, "I see you." When it was sung by Beyonce, she understood it to mean, "I've done it. You can do it too." And Melba Beals is especially proud of Beyonce because her country album is, in part, a response to the unwelcoming response that she received from some people when she performed with the Chicks at the 2016 Country Music Association Awards. That night in 2016, she took the stage. She was backlit. She was wearing this ivory-colored, sparkly dress, and she looked like a new sun goddess. I mean, just impressive and just great performance. And they were singing a fully countrified version of Daddy's Lessons, one of her songs on Lemonade. And most of the crowd was on their feet having a great time. I mean, they were absolutely clapping and singing. It was like WBUUC yesterday at the installation. It was like, woo, they were having a great time. But one prominent country music artist got up and walked out. Another stood unmoving, and you can see the footage of this. They kind of wiped it from the CMA sites, but it's, of course, nothing is ever wiped, right? It's out there in the world. So, and it's a great performance, you can see it. But then another artist, a very prominent artist, just kind of stood there with this mask of disapproval, not moving for the entire song. I'm in here somewhere. Oh, yes, I am. So, anyway, but, and then a third artist the next day tweeted, "I want to know when BET or Soul Train Awards are going to ask a country artist to perform on their awards show." And that felt to a lot of people, and I think it felt to Beyonce too, although she never publicly named anybody when she said she felt unwelcome. But I'm sure that felt like a mean-spirited, decidedly unwelcoming response. And so were many of the social media comments from country fans, which implied or outright said that she had no place being on a country stage. The argument was that pop stars shouldn't be there, but the undercurrent was unmistakably, it felt very, very strongly of racism. In defense of his comments, Travis Tritt posted a couple days later that any music that strays from its roots becomes lost. Well, not only did his comments resonate with a false assertion that country music is a white cultural space, it fundamentally misunderstands or denies the actual roots of country music. Let's start with the banjo. The banjo was a unique invention of enslaved Africans and their descendants in the Americas. Several traditional West African instruments are very similar to the banjo and date much further back. They were made out of hollowed gourds covered in an animal hide to create like a drum body, and then with a long a neck with strings, and one of them shorter than the others. We're talking about very banjo-esque. And the one young man whose family's from Gambia, and his father plays this particular traditional music instrument that looks very much like a banjo. He went back and he found an instruction book on how to play the banjo from the mid-1800s, and he was astonished to see that it's the same fingering technique that his father uses on this traditional piece. So it is well established that the banjo is a product of African Americans in this country, specifically people who had been enslaved and their children. So people who had been kidnapped, torn from their culture, they brought within them the knowledge of how to build and play instruments. And to me, that's an astonishing form of survival, an affirmation of their own humanity and culture. Musical history scholars have demonstrated that the African American banjo tradition profoundly influenced nearly all American popular music, including country. And on top of that, there were a number of Black musicians in the 20th century that had a significant influence on what Travis Tritt and others would consider classic country music. In the early 20th century, there was a blues musician named Rufus T-Tot Payne, who developed a modest musical following in Alabama. In 1932, he met a poor young white boy named Hiram Williams. Well, young Hiram had managed to get a guitar with his earnings from selling peanuts and shining shoes, but he didn't know how to play it, or not well. He asked Payne to teach him, which he did, and the story goes in exchange sometimes for Hiram's mother feeding him. But after several years learning from T-Tot Payne, Hiram Williams won a talent show, started singing regularly on the radio, and changed his name to Hank Williams. Hank Williams Jr. wrote the T-Tot song, acknowledging the tremendous gift his father received from that Black musician. And other major country stars also learned from Black performers. Leslie Riddle was a Black guitar player and singer who had a very close association with A.P. Carter of the Carter family, the first family of country music, traveling with A.P. Carter on song hunting trips and teaching Maybelle Carter songs and guitar licks. And there are several other prominent country musicians that were influential early on that learned from Black musicians in the South. Recent scholarship has shown that Black Americans actively participated in the hillbilly recording industry almost from the beginning. And that was the precursor to country music, also known as old-time music. And I know you talk to people who do bluegrass versus old-time, and I mean, they know a lot more about it than I do. But the roots there are in what was called hillbilly music at the time. Between 1924 and 32, over 175 different records were made from recording sessions with Black artists or collaborations between Black and white artists. But that didn't fit in with how the phonograph and record companies, the ones making the money, how they had begun marketing music. Originally, most companies released blues records or old-time records without racial designation. But then white Northern executives, wanting to sell to people in the South, decided to market records by separating the music of Black and white Southerners into race records or hillbilly records. And those names would shift to rhythm and blues and country and Western after World War II. Patrick Huber, a country music scholar, and others think that the artificial categories of race and hillbilly did more than allow easy marketing. They created a mythology about the origins of hillbilly music being purely Anglo-Celtic, erasing the very clear impact of the blues, gospels, spirituals, and the banjo. Even so, there have been Black country and Western artists and Black artists who have made country albums all along. I mean, of course, we think of Charlie Pride. Ray Charles had a huge country hit, an album. Tina Turner put out a country album. I think it was Country Done My Way. It's actually very good. You can listen to it. Those stand out, but there were others. And now there are more Black country artists than I could possibly name. And while I was doing this sermon, I was writing a sermon, I was listening to playlists on Tidal, my streaming service, of Black country artists. And there were so many, like just tons, and great music. And I mean, many of them just solid, you know, in the current tradition of, I mean, not current, but recent past tradition of country music, and everywhere in between, just great stuff. And recent surveys have shown also that significant numbers of BIPOC folks listen to country music regularly. Country music isn't a white space, although there's also surveys that show that there's a fair amount of racist incidents that happen at country music events. So there is racism there, but it's not a white space. It isn't that way now and never truly has been. So saying that Beyonce should not be performing at the CMA Awards because she should stay in the confines of Black music or not release a country album, that's profoundly ignorant of the roots and realities of country music. And there are lessons for us to learn from that, whether we listen to country music or not. The theme for this month is pluralism. It's a very academic word. In fact, I asked, what's the theme for this week I'm going to be preaching? He's like, pluralism. I'm like, oh, okay, I can work with that. It's a very academic word, but it really means that we strive to create the kind of community, congregation, world where people get to be their whole selves as they are, able to talk about and express the experiences they have had, the beliefs that shaped those, or that were shaped by those experiences. They get to express it in ways that are authentic, regardless of somebody else's narrow thinking. People get to be their whole selves, and we make room for each other. We get to see the divinity in each person, the light in each person, just as they are and all that they bring. In the words of the UUA's new Article 2, we are a pluralist faith. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. And that is a work in progress, of course, for country music and for Unitarian Universalism. I still remember, and this was decades ago and not here at this congregation, when I first became a UU and was noticing that the membership of the congregation I was attending did not reflect the community that I lived in or that the congregation was set in terms of ethnicity and class. And another white member explained that poor people, and I don't know if she said it, but she may have, or it was least implied, poor people and people of color need a different kind of faith that offers more certainty. It was a subtle form of saying they don't belong here. The opposite of cultural pluralism in our context is white supremacy. And it is more pervasive than Creeping Charlie and Buckthorn put together, which we maybe all have been trying to get rid of. We need to intentionally work toward and keep working toward cultural pluralism in our congregation, in Unitarian Universalism, in our nation. We need to intentionally work toward dismantling the falsehoods that pervade our culture and even unwillingly our own perceptions and assumptions. And it matters because words that dismiss people, diswelcome people, dehumanize people are so powerful that just one or two people in a room can make someone feel unwelcome, unwanted, and that they do not have a place here. And it matters because words and actions of genuine welcome, genuine care and concern for people just as they are, like Mrs. Pickwick's concern and care and protection of Melba Beal, these can create a small but vital oasis of care, decency, and love. And sometimes our words just might kind of give somebody a little bit of hope. Now is the time to do this work. Build this kind of community. Build this kind of world. In the words of Paul and Beyonce, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Thank you. And our hymn, if you will stand and sing, please, is This Little Light of Mine.
Join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and the love of truth forever guide us. Thank you.